Hello, welcome to the Hoop Collective podcast. We talk about the NBA and we're presented by Coinbase. Joining me from Boston, Massachusetts, where Game 5 of the NBA Finals will take place on Monday evening, Tim Bontemps.
Hello, everybody.
And also joining us from Boston, Massachusetts, where he's come to see if the Mavericks can bring him back home to Dallas. You got to go back to Dallas anyway, but will there be going back for a game? Ben MacMahon.
Howdy, partners.
That's all? And you have no other comment?
Listen, come on. We waited on you all night. You got to carry this bad boy. Let's go.
Don't blame me because
fresh from a trip home. Here we go, Wendy.
Yeah. All right.
We were all here working today. We as in Jackson and Adi and me and MacMahon. We're all here working.
Well, I have been known as a slacker. So on Sunday afternoon, there was a little practice, a little availability with the Mavericks and Celtics. And Kyrie Irving, who I honestly think that for all that he has said and done that has shown us that he has moved on from his past, the connection to Boston is not yet broken. It is still there. We saw in his little interactions with the crowd, it was better than the interactions in previous years where he was making gestures and stomping his feet. The target of flying objects, I guess by that standard, it was better in games 1 and 2. But him, going back and forth with the crowd, both during the game and then, not being able to prevent himself from talking about how he didn't think they booed him loud enough, all that stuff. There was a little bit of leakage around the edges there. And then MacMahon on Sunday, Kyrie re-engaged the Boston part of his past again.
Yeah, and I mean, he's been open about having regret about the way he's interacted with Celtics fans since he left Boston. Today, he discussed regrets that he had about not embracing the tradition of the Celtics pride, the cult that is the Celtics during his time as an employee here in Boston. And, he acknowledged today that he hears the Kyrie sucks chance, that it has weighed on him. Villains aren't supposed to be vulnerable, but Kyrie's not one to conform to what, you're supposed to be. And he basically kind of, had I don't want to say a therapy session, but a very honest discussion with the media about the psychological challenges of being public enemy number one at TD Garden Arena. And he said, the fans with their chants and with everything they're saying, he said, they think that they have a psychological edge, and that's fair, and basically talked about it doesn't help when he's missing shots and he's turning the ball over, and it kind of provides more ammo. And he talked about not just having to deal with all that from the crowd, but then the self-doubt that creeps in. And so, maybe he feels like openly discussing it is a way to work his way through it. But it was interesting to hear him basically acknowledge, I am bothered by being the target of so much venom as a visitor in Boston.
Yeah, I mean, MacMahon, when you say that it was a fair and honest assessment of the situation here in Boston, I don't know if I would go quite to that degree with the way Kyrie described it. But, I mean, look, the facts are the guy stunk in the first 2 games. He'd lost double-digit games in a row to this team. And he played much better in Dallas in games 3 and 4. But yeah,
what did you disagree with? What did you think was not fair?
I mean, him acting like he had to conform to anything with the Celtics, I think, is ludicrous. I mean, he torpedoed the franchise in the second year he was here. I mean, there were plenty of reasons why that 2018-19 team, which is as talented a team as I've been around, was a disaster that season. Kyrie was at the epicenter of all of it.
I think he has acknowledged that. I think he's acknowledged that in his personal life, he was not in a good place then, and he was not as a result professionally, that it was a chaotic time for him.
Yeah, that he has, but then he's also saying they expect you to like conform to the cult of the Celtics. The Celtics were like throwing parades for Kyrie when he got up at the preseason gala and declared to the world at TD Garden on the court with Scal that he was going to re-sign with the team. Like there was no needing for him to conform to anything. He just
and by the way, I just want to say something about that. And look, I want to go over this old ground, but Kyrie is, I just think we have to set the record straight here.
Yes.
I would give Kyrie a pass on him declaring he's resigning if he just sort of made it as an utterance at a fan event. But he then subsequently, just as a reminder, made a television commercial.
Yes,
correct. With his father, the newest Anta Chu endorser, not endorser.
Frozone to Sasha Doncic's Mr. Incredible.
Yes.
Well, let me just say this. If you're going to leave Nike and you're going to, I think he was making over $20 million a year, or at least the contract average $20 million a year. If you're going to leave Nike and have to go to Anta, which is a big brand in China, but is certainly a Chinese brand, and you're going to lose that money and you're going to lose the prestige of being a signature Nike athlete and you're going to lose your Nike signature shoe, you should get some ancillary benefits, such as signing your dad to an endorsement deal.
That's right. It's
Like-
no knock on him, but
Like, go for it. I'm like, enjoy it.
He did do the whole commercial where it was like, oh man, my jersey's going to be up in the rafters one day, and then 8 months later, it's being worn by Enes Kanter. So again,
I mean,
like,
so maybe Cantor's or Freedom's jersey will be up in the rafters, and
it's
technically, it's like
now
Carlisle's numbers in the rafters. It's just because of Paul Pierce.
Well, now Peyton Pritchard's wearing it, so Peyton Pritchard could be winning a title in Kyrie's jersey on Monday. But listen,
Well,
we don't really need to.
If Peyton Pritchard if he hits some more half court shots,
if he hits some more, we'll talk about this later. But Peyton Pritchard's like 1 of 15 in this series.
Yes,
the one was memorable.
Yeah,
it sure was. But
anyway.
yeah, we don't need to relitigate the entire Kyrie catalog, and I agree he has been fairly straightforward about some of his stuff here. I just was amused at this line of thinking from him today that he had to conform to anything when he was here. Because trust me, the Celtics were not trying to make Kyrie Irving conform to anything. He just took the franchise and sent it down the tubes for a year.
Also,
down the tubes.
He said that he didn't.
Tim, that's the team was projected to take over the conference when LeBron left. I was asked to move to Boston to cover them for ESPN because they were expected to be a super team.
Well, and that's what took it down the tubes.
They were by the end of the season,
when have you ever moved somewhere and a franchise has benefited? That was the problem. Stop trying to blame Kyrie when you should be taking
accountability. I'm not blaming.
The Celtics took off the second you moved to New York.
The Warriors did okay after he moved to San Francisco.
Yes, they did. And I am not.
He was commuting from Washington. He was with the Washington Post.
Sure.
Yeah, he was living in San Francisco. Anyway, forget about that. Also, I just want to say a couple things real quick before I move on from Kyrie. One, he said that how did he phrase it? I don't want to have this wrong. MacMahon, he said that he didn't really. He said, I didn't really want to be traded. He said Boston wasn't on my list. He gave the Cavs a list. And he said
something like Boston wasn't his first option or something along those lines.
Okay, just
I'm looking for the transcript here so I can quote accurately, but go on.
Just fact check. Yeah, I mean, I do agree that Boston probably was not, when he met with the Cavs and said, I'd like to be traded. I would probably agree that Boston was not on his short list. But when he found out he was going to Boston, he absolutely wanted to go to the level that when the Cavs almost backed out of the deal because they got a physical on Isaiah Thomas, and Isaiah Thomas's hip was worse than was expected.
When the Cavs should have backed out of the deal.
Well, they should have. They got an extra second round pick, which I thought they had him over a barrel, but that's really actually going way too far back.
Well, when I look back getting traded here, it wasn't one of my options. It wasn't like number one on my list. So when the trade opportunity got approached to me, instead of going back and appreciating the Celtics history, I just came in with an open mind and just kind of like, all right, I'm just going to go with the flow into this. But I think that was the wrong approach. Just being young. I'm going to remind everyone that by that point, Kyrie Irving was entering his 7th season in the NBA.
I mean, dude, he was still, yes, but he was what, 25 or 26?
He's the same age as Luka is now. And,
Yes.
people are, Luka's been a pro for a decade and people are still saying, well, Luka's young. And I mean, I agree that Luka at age 32, the way Kyrie is now, I think we'll look back on his age 25 year
Again,
and have
I
some
just
comments.
will,
But
I just would like to point out that there's been a lot of rewriting of history on a lot of levels
I
over
know,
the
and
past several months. And I think it's generally insane.
and let me correct this. When he thought he was going to Boston and then the deal got threatened to be taken away, not because of him, but because of Isaiah Thomas, he told the Cavs, he needed surgery on his knee because he had some hardware in there that needed to be removed. And maybe that's not even 100% accurate, but that's ended up, he did end up having the surgery.
Mm-hmm.
He needed surgery on his knee at some point. And he said to the Cavs, I mean, this has been reported. This is not breaking news. This has all been out there. He said to the Cavs, okay, well, if you don't do this deal, I'm going to have the surgery now, and I won't be there for the start of the season. And the Cavs, I don't think that necessarily the Cavs, I think, wanted the deal. They wanted the draft pick. I don't want to relitigate it all that. But, just again, filling out the whole thing, Kyrie wanted Boston bad enough that he threatened that to make sure the trade went through. So there was a point where he was like, you know what, this isn't a bad setup. This is actually going to work.
And here's the bottom line, right? For all the talk we've just had about him relitigating all this history and whatever, to me, it was another sign, as I said before the series started, when he talked about Boston at the end of the Minnesota series. I was like, all right, very curious to see how this guy handles coming back here and how it's going to go. He handled it as badly as humanly possible in the first two games. He psyched up he was terrible on the court. He psyched up the crowd after the first game for absolutely no reason, gave them all the more reason to yell at him. A guy who never is demonstrative on the court was going at fans on the court during the game in game 2 when he hit a couple shots to start the game.
It's been worse, but he certainly...
I was going to say, as bad as possible, no. Not great, yes.
Okay, sure. That's fair. He handled it as bad as you reasonably could have expected him to from an on-court perspective.
The middle finger stayed in the holster. That's progress.
Sure. I mean, Kyrie going 13 for 37 from the field and 0 for 8 from 3 is about as bad as you could expect him to shoot the ball.
Yeah. And if he doesn't handle it better in game 5, that will be the final game of the NBA season. And Kyrie is well aware of that. And, I thought today was Kyrie kind of openly discussing the struggles that he's having while I don't know that he has a clear path on how exactly he's going to be in a better mind space to handle it in game 5. I think he's still in the process of trying to figure it out. I think he was kind of thinking out loud up there during his press conference today. I mean, he knows he's going to hear the stuff in the crowd. The Kyrie sucks chance will be, if anything, even louder now. Oh, we have a psychological edge. Great. That sort of a deal.
Crowd for this game Monday night is going to be absolutely out of control.
Yeah, people are paying $2,000 just to get in the door. I mean, that's the cheapest seats. And so, if he doesn't figure out a way to be, mentally in a spot where he can perform, then the Mavericks season's over, because they need him to be as good as he was in Dallas. They need a very good version of Luka. They need Derek Lively II to be as good as he was in Dallas. And if that's the case, there's a chance this series can be extended. But if Kyrie's firing away 35% and hearing the crowd and not tuned in to the game, then the duck boats will be fired up for the old Celtics parade.
Before we move on to the actual game itself, we're starting to get there. I just want to say one thing, because there was discussion today, and I know that it was some reporters asking the question. I'm not saying the guys went to the podium with this, but there was a discussion today about the expectations, and this was presented to Kyrie as well. The expectations when you're a Celtic, that you play for championships, et cetera, et cetera. I just want to point out the Celtics have won one championship in 38 years. One. The expectations and pressure on this team are as a result of this team being so close over the last 6 years.
Yes and no. Yes and no. The Dallas Cowboys have not won a championship since I freaking graduated high school. And it is still like a championship or bust expectation of that franchise on a year-to-year basis. The
Yeah, and the same
Celtics,
thing.
the Lakers, the
Yes.
Cowboys, the Yankees. There are certain franchises where the history is so rich, the fan base is so massive that regardless of reality, you have that level of pressure. And the Celtics are absolutely one of those franchises.
Well, having lived in New York and been around because I think the Yankees are even maybe a better analog than the Cowboys, because the Yankees have also been like the Celtics in the playoffs a ton without winning and haven't won a title in, I think, 15 years. It's definitely a similar thing where, yes, part of it is obviously, Brian, to your point, that the last 8 years, this team has been right here. And so this current group has knocked on the door a lot. But this is a team that doesn't hang division title banners. They don't hang conference championship banners. It is like, they're like this team, there hasn't been a lot of celebrating of them making the finals or the conference finals. It's like, okay, now are you going to win another series? And that was going back for years now, too.
I understand that. And the Yankees, it's like, why they're expected to win has nothing to do with 1927. Why the Celtics are expected to win has nothing to do with 1969. Right. But, the Miami Heat, and it's a Riley thing, but the Miami Heat have the Larry O'Brien trophy placed in every locker and on the center of their locker room floor. It's because that they're expected to do that every day, but you'd never say the Miami Heat,
Well, listen, if you don't be denigrating the old hashtag Heat culture here, pal.
Well, it's,
the Heat culture people would tell you that's the expectation down there every day.
Listen, you better have some tradition if you're going to have a paragraph in the paint.
Okay, so out on the court, or actually, will he be on the court? Bontemps, I know you got to see Porzingis again today. He is listed as questionable for Game 5. I know that this is a big thing. I'm getting ready to do a full slate of TV on Monday, and it's like, what's the latest on Porzingis? What's the latest
life
on
he's got, MacMahon?
Humble
tough
brag,
life.
Baby. Humble brag, baby.
Tough life.
The Porzingis injury it's a bit mysterious.
I mean, you could just say it's bizarre. I mean, it's as bizarre an injury as I've had to deal with. I mean, there's not many recorded cases of it, period. And it's not a sprained ankle. It's not a broken bone that, like, you could say, like, well, the guy's got a busted wrist or something. It's like this really nebulous thing. Kristaps is walking around without really a brace or walking boot or crutches. It's not like he's hobbling around. I mean, he walked by MacMahon and I walking out of the building, and he's got slides on. He's walking around and moving fine. And none of this is to say this is obviously not insinuated. It's some kind of made up deal. It obviously is not. But I even talked a little about it the other day. Like, it's a bizarre, really rare injury. And I think he is doing everything he can to try to play. I'm really curious to see if he's out there for another workout like he was ahead of Game 4 when he was clearly trying to sell being out there. And I did think it was interesting that he went from out to, he could maybe be out there for an end of quarter situation to shoot a 3 or be out there at the end of the game or whatever. I would assume at minimum he'll be available for that in Game 5. I don't know why you wouldn't have him if you were for Game 4.
Right.
But I think the question is, can he give him 5-10 minutes? And if he could come out there and hit a couple threes and block a shot, even, like, that would potentially be a significant factor. So it's just really an unprecedented thing that I think everybody's trying to get their heads around.
I think what you just said is important. I think because we're used to the idea of either the guy's available or he's not. Okay, he's available. Now he's playing. Like, even if he's listed as available, you're not seeing Porzingis from Game 1. Well, I don't think
who knows? He came back from 38 days off in that game. I'll say this. I do know for certain that Porzingis is able to plant on that foot and accelerate quickly, because when he came out and he saw Bontemps, let me tell you, he kicked it into fifth gear and got the L out of there.
He really saw MacMahon. It's like, I'm telling you, man, this guy brings back bad memories. I got to get away from him. He's split.
That's right. That's right, man. There's a reason he hadn't played in Dallas since so he didn't have to deal with me.
But I just feel for Kristaps, man. Ever since like I've said this a few times on the pod, going back to last summer, but when he got traded here last summer, a lot of people around the league called me and said, man, like, how's this? I mean, we talked about it at the time because of your experience with MacMahon. Like, how's this guy going to handle being the third option, the fourth option, the fifth option, not getting the ball all the time, maybe not finishing games, maybe not starting? From the second this guy got here, all he has done is say, tell me what you need me to do. I'm thrilled to be here. He clearly hated being in purgatory in Washington for a year and a half, and he was thrilled to be on a great team in a big market on a big stage. He's always a guy who's wanted to have the spotlight on him. And he's been like, the guys on the team absolutely love him. He just fit in here perfectly. And you could see after game one how genuinely thrilled everybody on the team was for him to come back and have that moment and play the way he did. Not just because he was helping him on the court, because those guys all really like him. And he's just dying to play. He was really excited to play in Dallas. He then obviously couldn't play there again. And I just hope for his sake, he's able to come back and play a little bit in this series, whatever the result is. Because it just would stink for him if his season ends with him sitting there on the bench.
If it ends with him celebrating a championship, I think he'll be okay. But
can be worse.
I mean, he's obviously not going to be upset about that.
It'd be bittersweet, though. It'd be bittersweet. And look, he not only hated being in purgatory, he hated how things went in Dallas.
Right.
And not just the time where he really struggled being, it's not 1B, it's Luka, and like I'm like the leader of the others. You know, like he was the headliner of the supporting cast. He hated that. He obviously was frustrated playing for Rick Carlisle, and we've talked about how he really struggled to embrace the role that's somewhat, aside from them feeding him the ball in the post, basically the role that he struggled to embrace in Dallas is very similar to the role that he has now for the Celtics. But then once he got over all that, and he had a fresh start with Jason Kidd, and Jay Kidd's kind of pumping him up, saying, hey, you know, we want you to be the unicorn. Like, we want those post touches. He got half a season of that, interrupted by injuries, and then Dallas dumped him. And so it's been...
what people may have been talking to Bontemps about his role. People were talking to me about his injuries.
Well,
because he did have a healthy year last year in Washington, but the idea that the Celtics were really super investing in a guy who hasn't proven he can be healthy. And here we are.
They traded Marcus Smart and got back Porzingis, who's a better player than Marcus Smart, and 2 first-round picks. There's a reason why the trade went that way.
Exactly. And when he left Dallas, dude, the Mavericks took back 2 contracts the Wizards were desperate to dump.
Yeah, it was a straight salary.
Dallas gave up a second-round pick as a sweetener in that deal. And I think the 2 things that people in Dallas, I think, would tell you, if they're being honest, have been surprised about Porzingis' success in Boston, has been obviously the post-up numbers. He's been the most efficient high-volume post-up player in the league, which is polar opposite of what it was in Dallas.
And by the way, the Celtics coaching staff deserves a ton of credit for that, because the reason those numbers are good is because they have optimized those post-ups, and they're basically making sure they're in good matchups and he gets the ball.
They taught him to turn around and go, oh, look at this. I'm way taller than this guy.
Well, it's where he's catching the ball. It's who he's doing it again.
That's
it.
But it's where he's catching the ball. Because in Dallas, it was a whole bunch of getting pushed out at 17 feet and taking
right. But as Bontemps says, they run their offense to ensure that the guy who's on him is a favorable matchup before they throw the ball in the post. And that kind of brings us...
Luka's gotten a switch or two. But the other thing is, in Dallas, his last full year in Dallas, he was awful defensively. Coming back off a knee injury, coming back off knee surgery, coming back, however many games into the season, and just miserable playing for a coach he didn't like, playing, in that COVID year. And he has been one of the most dominant rim protectors in the league this year. And by the way, that's where the Celtics really missed his defense, his presence around the rim in game 4.
I thought Xavier Tillman did a serviceable job, but that was the part of the game where the Celtics were drowning. And when they were in the half court, which wasn't that often because the Celtics were missing a ton of shots and Dallas was very speed up the game minded. But even in the instances when they were in the half court, they went after Tillman. They targeted Tillman, went after him, forced the switch. It wasn't like he was a swinging gate, but he wasn't Porzingis.
He ain't standing in front
fine.
of Luka.
Yeah, look, he was fine, but ultimately he's a non-shooter, takes away from him on offense, and I thought he was fine on defense, but again, like there's a reason he's a bit player, right?
Porzingis opens the floor offensively and shuts down the paint defensively. Tillman can't do either of those things.
That's right.
They're like two of the most important things that you can do.
That's why so let's say he can play let's say he plays 5 minutes. If that's 5 minutes of not Xavier Tillman, again, no offense to Xavier Tillman, that could be a significant part of the game.
Look,
but
if he comes in, if he can hit 2 threes and get a blocked shot in 5 minutes, I don't know if he's going to be able to, but it's like that could be the difference in the game. Like any bit you can get from him is a win. So we'll see what he can do.
He doesn't even necessarily have to hit the 3. He just has to stand out there and provide the spacing.
Sure.
Right.
Because they're not guarding Tillman. And, Tillman hit a 3 on him in game 3, but he was open by 17 feet, and that was by design. They would happily give up that shot again.
And the next time he gets it out there, he'll be open by 17 feet again.
Yes.
Right, which is why when the Celtics put their game plan together and they're trying to figure out whether they should put Porzingis out there or not, this is some of the stuff that they're thinking about, that they're going through the arithmetic on, is even if he's not great, and even if he's not moving that great, it's going to change the way that the Mavericks have to deal with him at both ends. So him being made available, I mean, I was kind of surprised he was made available, and then Joe Mazzulla said before the game he's not going to probably play.
He must not have had a good fit. He must not have really liked the outfit that he brought to the game. He was like, give me a warm up.
The sense I got was that he couldn't go out there and play real minutes yet, or maybe he won't be able to at all. But it was like, hey, maybe there's, like they brought in Peyton Pritchard to take, obviously, they wouldn't have Kristaps bring the ball up, but maybe there's a possession where we have Kristaps come in and space from 28 feet and maybe catch and shoot a 3. Or
it could be one out of bounds.
Let me ask you this, Bontemps, then why would Mazzulla before the game say that he'd only be using? Why wouldn't he just say he's available, he's going to give it a try?
I think because like I asked Joe, like, how exactly did you come to that? And he just repeated it. But also, like, I think it's also expectation setting for Porzingis, because if you just say he's available and then he doesn't play, well, then it becomes a whole thing. Like, did he not want to play?
No, then after the game, you can say, hey, he was available, but only in specific situations that didn't arise.
Well, sure. I think it's
because I'm not freaking under oath to give Dallas my game plan.
I just think I mean, look, I would say he just was preempting some of that. And like, I don't know. I don't think it matters that much that he said that.
I have a new standard. I will forever, until I forget about it, which will probably be in about 6 weeks. I will forever operate under the Anunoby standard now. Because I will never understand what was going on there.
Yeah, that was very strange.
Legitimately, Willis Reed looked better coming out of the tunnel.
That was one of the stranger things I've ever seen in person.
0. You're right again, MacMahon. Right again.
I'm also the same person that would say that, God bless Mike D'Antoni, the longtime should be in the Hall of Fame coach, who whenever you asked him who was starting in the game, he would just tell you. And Steve Kerr and everybody else is like, oh yeah, I need to think about my starters for another 40 minutes because God forbid I give the other team an extra 30 seconds to think about what they're going to do in the game.
Yeah. Well, there's two ways to play it. One is Eric Spoelstra, he just gives the dead eye answer where he goes, I will turn in my lineup card 45 minutes before tip-off is mandated under Rule 35, Section 2 of the NBA rulebook.
Right.
And then you have something that, the sort of the Ty Lue book where, hey, is Kawhi starting tonight? I don't know. Have you thought about what your starting lineup will be if Kawhi doesn't start? No, I haven't.
I just hate that crap. Just say who's going to start.
Sometimes he'll say, yeah. You want to share? No.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I
but
just-
like this playing of the dumb. I don't know. I haven't talked.
Yeah, I
to
just
the,
hate all that crap. I just always loved
Uh,
D'Antoni for just being like, yeah, this is what we're going to do. You know what? Like, try to stop it. Like, everybody's sitting here all day
That's
thinking about
true.
all this stuff.
Yeah,
It's not,
that's
the
that's
one
true.
time Steve like dramatically changed the starting lineup, put Andre Iguodala in there, like, okay, fine. I can understand if you're like, I'm not going to do it during the NBA finals. Okay. It's a
Yeah.
game in December. What are we doing here? What are we doing here with the lineup stuff? Like, I love Steve, but come on. It's
I will
ridiculous.
turn in my lineup card 45 minutes and
I mean,
not
Eric's
47 and
shtick
not
is-
44.
I would say
Eric's
the
shtick
vast
is very
majority of the
amusing.
coaches, though, are pretty tight with the lineup info.
Well, that is, I think, shifted in large part because of the Kerr thing. Like once Kerr started doing that, then everybody followed his lead. And now nobody says anything, which I mean, whatever. It doesn't really matter. It's just, I just think it's silly that it's guarded like a nuclear code. Like, come on.
So Bontemps, the Celtics are shooting 33% from 3-point range in this series. The statistic that you quoted to us routinely during the regular season, the Celtics use it too, is the 32% number. Isn't that right? If they
Right around 33%.
Right. During the first 3 rounds of the playoffs, they shot like 39 point something percent. Not quite 40. I can't remember if I would round up or round down, but they are underperforming their normal play, their normal shooting on 3-point shooting, and they are underperforming it throughout the playoffs is where they were the first 3 rounds as well. We know that when the Celtics get going from 3-point range, it's a death blow. You are not touching them. You really, if they shoot slightly above average or even average 3-point shooting, they're very hard to beat. If they have a quote unquote good 3-point shooting night, you're going down. They have not had a good really good 3-point shooting in this series, Bontemps. They've had decent volume at times. We haven't seen them really go off like we know they can. I am wondering if/when that game is coming. And if you see that as a potential key back on their home court in game 5.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think they're due to hit shots. I mean, Jason Tatum's shooting 36% from the field, and he's shooting 29% from 3 and almost 8 attempts per game. Jaylen Brown is shooting 24% on 6 attempts per game. I mean, those guys during the regular season, respectively, were, somewhere in the, I think the mid to high 30s. Jason Tatum was a 37% 3-point shooter. Jaylen Brown was a 35.5% 3-point shooter. If those guys start to regress to the mean in game 5, the Celtics could win by 25. And that's what I kept saying in the first 2 games of the series. Now, obviously, Porzingis being out changes things. The Celtics largely dominated those games without really shooting the ball well outside of the first quarter of game 1. And that was mostly Porzingis anyway. So, yeah, look, I think they're due to hit shots. Peyton Pritchard is another guy who's a good shooter who has barely been able to hit a shot in these playoffs. I mean, through the first 4 games of the series, I believe he is, I'm pretty sure 1 for 15 or 2 for 15 from the field. I mean, he's shooting 13% from 3, or 2 for 15 from 3, I should say. Like, all of these guys are due to have a game. So obviously the shooting component for Boston is key. And the other thing is, and the one thing I think you had to be concerned about if you're a Celtics fan, or if you are the Celtics, I think some people at the Celtics were concerned, was the way that Dallas dominated the boards. And MacMahon has talked about it a ton. When Derek Lively is really impacting the game in the paint, and he was way, way better in Dallas than he was in Boston, that's when the Celtics have some trouble because they're already not the biggest team. Now they don't have Kristaps Porzingis.
Mm-hmm.
I would expect with 2 days off, and 2 days off going into a potential game 6 and trying to empty the tank and win this game at home. I guess Al Horford's going to play a crap ton of minutes, especially if Porzingis, even if Porzingis can play a few, I would guess Al Horford's going to push it up over 35, and they're going to really try to run him out there and have him be out there. But the Celtics need to gang rebound. Jason Tatum, we've talked about the 10 rebound stat a lot. He's only averaging, only for his standards, he's at 7.8. Like
it's way down. I mean, the Celtics were the number 1 rebounding team in the playoffs coming into the finals.
Right. I mean, he needs to probably have a double-digit rebound game in game 5. And so those are the 2 things to watch. If Boston gets back to hitting threes, that's always, even still, with everything they've done to improve the team, especially without Porzingis, they sort of go back to where they were before, where they really rely on the 3. And then if they could be neutral on the boards, you got to, me, really like their chances of winning game 5. And then obviously it's the 2 stars against the 2 stars. Game 3, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown basically played Luka and Kyrie to a draw. Game 4, Luka and Kyrie dominated. If Luka and Kyrie don't dominate that matchup again, you like where Boston's probably going to be at by the end of the 48 minutes on Monday.
It's funny that there's been so much attention on how poorly Luka played defensively for the vast majority of the first 3 games. And I think that criticism was fair, to be clear. Having said all that, Boston's having a bad offensive series.
Luka pretty much said the same thing to Malika. He was like, yeah, people say whatever, but our defense isn't our problem.
I just
No.
In a vacuum, that statement is not incorrect.
It's not incorrect, but the Celtics are missing a lot of shots.
Okay, that's fine. That's my point. You can say Boston's having a bad offensive series. If you don't want to give the Mavericks defense credit, that's fine.
I think they deserve some credit. I just think a lot of these open threes are just being missed.
Simple fact is Boston is scoring 106.9 points per 100 possessions. 106.9 would have been the best defensive rating in the league by a comfortable margin. It's actually 102 and change with Luka on the floor. So all that to say, as much, we can talk blow by percentage and some possessions Luka didn't get back and all that. For all the focus on his defense, that has not been the Mavericks' biggest problem. It has not necessarily been a big problem for the Mavericks at all. The Mavericks did not score more than 99 points in any of their 3 losses. They've only cracked triple digits 1 time in this series. And their problem has been they can't score until they lit it up in game 4. And that gets back to the whole thing coming into the series. They needed Luka and Kyrie, 2 primarily offensive players, to be the 2 biggest stars in the series. And that's only happened for 3/4 of one game. Now that, it didn't need to happen into the 4th quarter because they got to chill. But again, if the Mavericks can score, that to me is if they can score, they're going to have a chance.
Right.
They haven't been able to score in their losses.
So I know this is corny, but I would also say that Mavericks' key is positive vibes only. You want Luka and Kyrie to play with emotion. You don't want you don't want them to be robots out there, but positive emotion. This is obviously key for Luka every game since he was 14 years old and probably earlier. Because
before he was 14, I don't think what the rest were doing mattered a whole lot.
I'll bet it did. I talked to a scout recently who watched him play when he was like 15 and said this is the exact same thing.
Yeah.
But I want him to play with emotion, but obviously that's going to be a struggle for him always to maintain the positive emotion. And then Kyrie in Boston needs to keep the emotion positive. And so rebound, keep defending pretty well, positive vibes only.
Well, and it's easy to say, and Kyrie has tried to say this is what he wants to do, that he's only going to invest emotional energy in the interactions with his teammates. It's easy to say that. It's a great idea. But if you've got, I don't know, whatever TD Garden holds, 20,000 people just all up on you, like, dude, it's hard to ignore that. And that's,
well, I'll let him go back and forth with fans. Like, that doesn't seem to bother him.
Kyrie? I'm talking about Kyrie.
Oh, Kyrie.
I'm talking about
I thought
Kyrie.
You meant Luka, because Luka is known to engage with fans.
On Luka,
there's 3 people I don't want Luka engaging with.
Yes.
They all wear gray.
Exactly. For Luka, we've seen many times where Luka, including when he ripped the soul out of the Target Center in Game 5, where Luka is absolutely at his best when he picks out a fan. He had one on the sideline. He had one sitting behind Snoop on the baseline. Who's crying now, mother fricker?
He was going right at Snoop as well.
No, it wasn't Snoop. It was the guy who was sitting right behind or standing right behind Snoop. People thought it was Snoop. It was the guy right behind him.
Right.
Yeah, when Luka, that energy, when it's, taunting a fan or like getting into like a trash talk situation with an opponent, that's great. When he's positive interactions with his teammates, that's awesome. When it's whining to the refs, that's when Luka falls that's when he gets derailed.
Yeah.
And so you're right. The 20,000, Luka taking on the 20,000 is fine. Luka taking on the other 5's fine. Those 3 guys in the gray shirts, those are the 3 guys who most often are the best at disrupting Luka's rhythm.
It's
Well,
hard.
also-
It's
He's
hard to beat
disrupting his own rhythm, but it's
very hard to beat those 3 guys too.
no,
Yeah.
You're not
undefeated.
playing the same game as they are.
Yeah, and the other thing too we haven't mentioned, it sort of goes with the Celtics shooting, is can the others on Dallas hit shots on the road? Because none of those guys did anything in the first couple games. And Derek Jones, PJ Washington,
Yeah.
can Maxi Kleba he hit a 3 last game? Can he give you some points? Can Dante Exum give you some points? Like it can't be Luka and
Dante Exum
Kyrie
has
versus
been unexpectedly important.
No,
Well,
Dante X, honestly, I've been surprised that he wasn't more important throughout the playoff run because
Yes.
through the regular season, there are times there have been other guys who were playing, and I'm like, why is Exum not in the game
yes.
over those guys?
Well, but he had a podium game in Game 4. Podium.
Well, but again, if Dallas, if it becomes Luka in Game 3, it was Luka and Kyrie playing great, and basically nobody else doing anything.
Lively
and
had a good game in Game 3.
He did, but I'm talking about from a overall scoring standpoint. Those guys can't outscore Boston by themselves, especially if Boston shoots moderately well, which they haven't in these games. If Boston, Dallas needs these other guys to hit shots. If PJ hit a couple threes in Game 4, Jones hit a 3, Kleber hit a 3, Dante hit, I think, 1 or 2 threes and just was productive.
Well, Derek Lively hit a 3, and when that happens, the Mavericks are undefeated when Derek Lively the second
that
hits
is
a 3-point shot.
is true.
You
That
didn't
is
even
true.
need to credit Stats Williams on that. Good
Didn't
job.
even have to go to the
One
ESPN
for one.
Stats and Info to figure that one out.
Good job.
Yes.
So there's a new rule in place this year that as soon as the finals end, teams can start negotiating with their own free agents. By the way, teams always were negotiating with their own free agents. It's just that instead of them announcing them on June 30th at 6:02 p.m., they'll be able to start coming to terms as soon as the games are over. So in theory, if the Celtics win on Monday night, there could be teams that announce agreements immediately and or within 24 or 48 hours. So for example, Pascal Siakam.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's a good chance Pascal Siakam will be re-signing with the Pacers. And I'm not saying that I'm not reporting this is going to happen. As an example, it wouldn't be stunning if quickly after the end of the finals, Pascal Siakam now announces an extension with the Pacers.
I mean, the question is player option in the last year or not, pretty much, right?
Right. And we could see some guys on rookie extensions.
Yeah, Tyrese Maxey could get a deal done fairly quickly. Scotty Barnes could get a deal done fairly quickly. If Detroit wants to do a max with Cade Cunningham, they could probably get him done fairly quickly.
Yeah.
Like a lot of those
now
kinds of deals.
Maxey though, they can't.
Well, no. It's not. It doesn't become official. None of these become official like everything until after the moratorium. It's just you can instead of like waiting until June 30th. You can agree now, and it just basically becomes it's just set for 3 weeks. That's
but the reason we're bringing this up is because there's a few players who, by the way, goes for free agents too, not just extension guys. So
Cavs corner.
Well, Donovan Mitchell.
Cavs corner.
Donovan Mitchell is one of the guys who could do an extension, and theoretically minutes at the end of the finals.
So could Evan Mobley,
presented by Adidas.
Evan Mobley. But
Isaac Okoro. Let's go right down the list of Cavs guys. So they could all sign.
Some guys to pay attention to are guys that you wonder whether they're going to get to July 1st. And if they get to July 1st, what it means. I'm going to say 2 right off the bat. There'll be more, and we'll be talking more about this when the finals are over. But this in theory, it could end Monday night, and this in theory could be a thing starting on Tuesday. 2 players I want to mention. 1, Paul George, and 2, Klay Thompson.
Can I add a third?
Yeah.
Contavious Caldwell-Pope. I think he's a very key free agent.
I mean, can I add a 4th? I mean,
sure.
OG Anunoby.
Yeah, I mean, OG obviously is interesting too. I just think because of where Denver is from a financial standpoint, the KCP situation is extraordinarily interesting. And if he leaves, they don't really have a way to replace him.
Right. So KCP is going to opt out. And so the question is, as Bontemps says, does he get to July 1st? Denver doesn't want that to happen. Denver would want to get that done. But he's a role player. Let's talk about Paul George and Klay Thompson. Obviously, the Clippers have been able to extend Paul George for quite some time and have not gotten anything done. And Paul George is out in the world, and you're not seeing him say anything that's stopping any speculation he could be going anywhere. And he was playful with Joel the other night. Now, I have long suspected that this is all a leverage play onto the Clippers. But the Clippers, to this point, have not yielded to the threats of him leaving. And we know this because he hasn't signed.
Well, and again, tell you what, the man is still following the Clippers on Instagram. I just looked it up.
Well, the Klay Thompson and following everyone is right out of the Andre Iguodala playbook, and he stayed at the Warriors, which I suspect Klay probably will too. The thing to remember with the Clippers situation, because I'm sure there are fans sitting there going, well, Steve Ballmer's got all the money in the world. What does he care? Just pay Paul George, whatever. The Clippers, like a lot of teams, are really focused on the second apron, a second luxury tax apron. They're trying to avoid going into it. This is why the rule was created. So teams are not just going to spend money no matter what. This is the first year where the 25-26 season, not this coming season, the next season is when the really draconian tax rates kick in. So then it becomes extraordinarily expensive on top of it. But this is the first year where the draft pick freezing starts. All that stuff starts to kick in. And so if you're a team like the Clippers that's got James Harden as free agent, that's already got Kawhi Leonard to sign for a less than full max, as we talked about the day he signed that extension, all three of us were like, this is could be a potential tricky thing.
Forget about the, little bit less from max money per year. Kawhi took 3 years.
That's right.
I think it's as much about the years as the,
yes, absolutely,
few million off the full max.
Absolutely agree.
That's right.
Hey, I want if I'm taking 50 mil and not whatever the max number is, I want 4 full years.
That's right. So there's a lot of stuff going on there, and it's not as simple as just Steve Ballmer writes a check and he plays for whatever and he stays. So again, like you said, Brian, there's going to be a bunch of these situations where the longer it goes, Donovan Mitchell factors in too. I think if they're going to get an extension done with him, which I expect at some point they will get done. We'll see, but that's another one where the longer that goes and the longer it's not done, the more you start to wonder, is something going to happen here?
So relatively long time between now and July 1st. And, so maybe because this is a new thing, maybe everybody isn't necessarily rushing to do it. So if the finals end on Monday night and your favorite player hasn't re-signed by Wednesday, I'm not saying you have a panic, but it is something. It's funny you bring up that Iguodala thing. That reminds me of that story where when Iguodala was a free agent, he'd already won a few titles and he wanted to get taken care of. When the Warriors came in to meet with him in the boardroom at his agent's office or whatever, there was knickknacks from the Rockets still there. Like the Rockets came in, Daryl Morey brought in Rockets pennants and stuff and Rockets sunglasses and threw them on the table. And it was just, they were strategically left there just in case the Warriors didn't know the Rockets had been there. They left the stuff and Steve Kerr got in there. He picked up the Rockets sunglasses and put them on while he was sitting at the table. And Iguodala did get I also remember he was thinking about going to the Spurs for way less money than the Warriors could offer. And it was Andre is very invested in tech, and Austin is a tech capital, and
definitely can hold that against the Warriors in the Bay Area.
right.
It was all absurd.
And they may soon be building a high-speed train line between Austin and San Antonio. I was like, okay, that's why he's going to sign for the mid-level, So
well, and again, look, the Warriors are in a similar boat to the Clippers, where again, these rules were all enacted by the NBA in large part to keep the Warriors and the Clippers from just spending money ad nauseum and doing whatever they wanted from a salary standpoint. Joe Lacob is on the record saying he wants to be out of the tax. They've got Chris Paul sitting there in a potential $30 million expiring contract, which they could use a lot of different ways if money wasn't an issue. And they've got this Klay Thompson situation to resolve. Now, again, I think it will be like the Iguodala situation. He will be back. I certainly hope that Klay is back because I don't really want to see as a basketball fan. I don't really want to see him have some end of his career where he bounces around to a team or two and he doesn't finish things out with those guys. Whatever. I think it'd be a lot more fun for him to just stay there and keep being a good player like he was last year and play for them. But pride could get in the way here and money could get in the way here. And it will be interesting to see if something comes up that appeals to him, and we'll see what happens there.
Well, the thing is, obviously it can be pointed out, and it has before, and it will be again, that Andrew Wiggins and Draymond Green both took pay cuts, got longer term deals, and stayed with the Warriors. And I think there's, as you mentioned, Bontemps, they've handled their business that way. And that's probably the way, if you were wagering, that would go with Clay.
Well, but Clay says, okay, I'll take that pay cut.
Exactly.
They took, not, they
exactly.
took 4 years, not 2.
Not only the years, but they took the actual dollars per year were relatively mild.
Yeah. 4 for 100. Okay.
Less
for, I mean, right. I think
they were less than 10 million. I think maybe even like less than 7
I'm
million.
not trying to sound, I don't want to sound like a person shilling for teams here, but I do think we're talking about a very different thing when Clay was on a full 30% max with 8% raises.
I understand
and those guys
that.
Were not.
I understand that. I'm just saying, not all,
well, I know.
Not all pay cut. I'm just saying, I've already seen this being said. Well, this guy took a pay cut and this guy took a pay cut. Now it's Clay's turn, but not all pay cuts are created equal is all I'm saying.
I think it's less about the money with Clay than it is about the respect factor. And I think if he's shown,
it's at some point, the money
equals
the respect.
I understand, but I don't think respect I'm not, obviously money is part of it, but you can respect the guy in a lot of ways, including giving him all the money. So I think there's a lot of ways to massage this between Steve Kerr and Mike Dunleavy and Steph and Draymond and everybody there. I suspect they will find a way to get this to a place where it works out for everybody. That's
all right. MacMahon and I ain't predicting Bontemps. Before we go, do you have flight plans to Dallas on Tuesday?
Well, of course I have flight plans to Dallas on Tuesday because before the series started, I had flight plans booked for all 7 games to make sure I had the right seating and flights.
So do I.
Yes, of
Look
course.
At you sideways. And MacMahon's got him too because he's going home no matter what.
Of course. Look, I thought the Celtics were going to win Game 4. I was obviously on the record with that. I was obviously wrong about that. I do think the Celtics are going to win Game 5. I think obviously Dallas played great in Game 4. Everything went great for Dallas. Everything went poorly for Boston. I think the change of scenery helps the Celtics. We talked about Kyrie Irving. I don't expect him to handle this that great. I don't think the others on the Mavs play that great. And the Celtics are just due to hit shots. I think they're going to have a game finally where they go 20 for 42 from 3. And if they attack the boards and they hit threes, I think they're going to get this title done on Monday night at the Garden. And if they do, it's going to be one heck of a party here in Boston. Because as MacMahon said earlier, the ticket prices are out of control. The arena is going to be lit. And people here have been waiting a long time to add this banner and go ahead of the Lakers. And they're ready to celebrate. So I think they'll get the chance to.
Well, we all know the record when teams are down 0-3. It's now not 0-3. It's now 3-1. But I'll just say the Celtics have to win 1 out of 3 games to win the championship. 2 of the 3 are at home. I would give almost any team in the NBA, not everyone, but almost every team in the NBA, the strong odds they would be able to pull that off. So whether it's Monday, whether it's Thursday, whether it's next Sunday, it would be much more fun for everybody if it was not until next Sunday. But that's as close as I can get to making a prediction, and I know it's hardly.
I will say real quick, if Boston does lose this game, and it is 3-2 going back to Dallas, and Dallas has the best player in the series, things are going to get awfully interesting very quickly. So it'd be smart for the Celtics to take care of business at home and get this thing over with.
All right. Thank you for MacMahon for staying mute. Thank you for watching the Hoop Collective. Thank you to our producers, Jackson and Adi. Thank you to MacMahon. Thank you to Bontemps. We will be talking to you later this week.
Adios, amigos.
Thank you for watching the Hoop Collective, presented by Coinbase. We'll talk to you soon.